constructive worry is basically like pre-gaming, way less fun, but it's like pre-gaming, if you will, with your brain. So it's like, let me worry about it before. Let me think about it before. So 2 hours before bedtime, sit down, take a piece of paper, your phone, I don't care how you do it, whatever you got, right? It could be a Post-it. And what you do is you sort of identify what do I think is going to be in my brain tomorrow, right? Or tonight. And it can, usually we know, right? Either something that's been there for a while, right? And we know it's going to show up again that night, or it's something new that's popped up during the day that, is unsettled, or you think about it. So that constructive worry is do it before bedtime and just give yourself 3 next steps so that when you go to bed at night, if your brain brings it back up, which it usually will, you can say like, hey, we've already thought about it. And then that will help you sort of drift to sleep.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. Hey everybody, it's Jeannie. Thanks so much for joining me here at Warriors at Work. So I don't know about you, but sleep has been a challenge, particularly the last couple of months. And while I feel like I'm pretty well educated and have lots of resources, I really felt compelled to get into a discussion with an expert. Enter Dr. Kimberly Lemke, sleep science coach, licensed clinical psychologist, corporate wellness consultant, founder and CEO of Drift. As a sleep science coach, Dr. Lemke is celebrated for her groundbreaking efforts to enhance sleep quality. I had the opportunity to see her speak and was blown away by how practical her ideas and her perspectives were. We are going to talk about the connection between sleep and mental health. We're going to share some success stories that she's had, but the practical tips and tricks that we can all do today, you will be blown away by this. We all need more sleep. And Dr. Lemke has the answers. I am so thrilled to bring to you this conversation. Enjoy. All right, Dr. Kimberly Lemke, I am so excited for this conversation. Probably one of the most profound conversations we're having in the world right now is the importance of the work that you do. So thank you so much for being here with me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and talk about this with you and your audience.
So I've had the benefit of seeing you work your magic in a room and feel so grateful to have your level of expertise at Warriors at Work because, I'm in service to people in the business community. And right now, mental health and sleep in particular, which we're going to take a deep dive in, is so topical. And so where I thought would be kind of interesting to start, your career really spans 2 decades of experience in clinical psychology, specializing in the treatment of children, adolescents, and adults with extensive experience in mental health and sleep science. So I want you to just take a step back and talk to us about why did you get into clinical psychology? Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, so it's an interesting, it's a funny story. So my mom didn't tell me this for years until after I was in the field. But she told me the story about how when I was 4 years old, apparently I would take my Barbies and I would line them up on like the little Barbie couch and I would ask the Barbies how they felt. So I'm pretty sure from a young age, while everybody else is playing with like the Barbie pool in the car and I'm asking them about their emotions, I'm pretty sure there's a part of me from early on that was meant to do something in this field. And so I always felt called to it. I always felt called to, emotions. I always felt were very powerful. And just as much as sort of thinking was important, sort of thinking with the heart as well was important. And throughout the years, as I went out and got my doctorate, one of the things that I really feel passionate about when it comes to why I do what I do is I think that we all have some form of darkness. We all have some form of struggle. And so the analogy I use is for myself in this field is that I never want anybody walking alone in their darkness. And I want to be there. And the role sort of I take on in my own head is that as we're walking through their darkness, I have a flashlight. Right? They have a flashlight too, but sometimes I think all of our own flashlights go a little dim and we can't see certain things. And so, it's just that idea of shining sort of light on certain ways to think or certain ways to feel and different perspectives. And so sort of doing that until somebody's, flashlight comes on their own, and then they can see it and then they can sort of navigate through it. So that's really sort of why I got into this was one, I think I was called clearly from a very young age. But two, I don't enjoy people having to be alone in their darkness. And if I can walk with them and I can shed light with them on whether it's anxiety, depression, or sleep issues or struggles, I just feel called to do that.
And you've worked really in a variety of clinical settings, from hospitals to academia. How have these different environments really shaped your approach?
I think the first thing that I really learned is really everyone struggles, right? And in a day and age too, where there's social media and everybody puts out, their best foot forward, and whether it's LinkedIn or it's Instagram or it's Facebook, everybody's showing the highlight reel of life, right? And in working in all these different settings, that's, sort of this, much, if you will, of somebody's life. It's a small portion, if you will. And people don't like to talk about the other stuff. And so I think not only to teach me that everyone struggles, but regardless of whatever setting I was in, we would always ask about sleep. So whether it was school or we're doing an evaluation for a hospital or an outpatient center or schools, when we asked people, how do you sleep? The answer was typically not good. And we started to notice that people were falling into categories regardless of the setting we saw them in. And so we saw people who just couldn't turn their brain off at night. We saw people who would put their head on the pillow and just not be able to fall asleep. And then we saw people who would wake up at the dreaded 2 to 3 a.m. hour and not be able to fall back asleep.
And you lay in your bed and you're like, don't check the time. Don't check the time.
Yes, exactly.
No matter what time it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And so regardless of the setting and a lot of times sort of regardless of the age, we just kept seeing the same issue. And so that's where that became a passion of mine. Was we saw it across ages, we saw it across settings. And so I really felt like I needed to go there and learn more about it. And then one day there was a Desmond Tutu quote that I came across that said, as opposed to pulling people out of the river, why don't we figure out why they're falling in the first place? And the moment I heard it, it just clicked with me. As sleep is why people are falling in, whether it's anxiety or it's depression or it's productivity issues or it's stress management, all those sort of things. We just see it so closely tied to sleep. And so that's where sort of my focus really sort of took light.
And you developed the drift sleep method, which goes way beyond typical advice about sleep. And I want to offer some statistics here to set the table that you shared with me that I thought were so powerful. Healthcare costs of individuals with insomnia is 85% higher than those without. On average, those who report poor sleep, this blew me away, they lose 7.2 hours of productivity per week. And poor and fair sleepers have a turnover rate of 49%, resulting in $32.4 billion in replacement costs for organizations. So you started to touch upon this, but of course I want to take a deeper dive. I'd love to hear your perspective and your approach on the drift sleep method.
So, I mean, those statistics are startling.
Oh my gosh.
Right? I mean, and nobody talks about it.
Nope.
And, I'm a business owner. I own 2 businesses. And so, originally when I'm learning about this, it's also how does it affect my businesses? Right. And so not only, do I adore sort of people and want them to sort of be the best humans they can be. But also as a business owner, it's also important to know what the research says about how to help your people. And so, we look a lot of times as organizations on the costs that we're spending, especially in this day and age, right? We're looking at, what sort of things, do we put funding in? What sort of things are we not putting funding in? And, one of the things that shows up in those statistics is how do you not focus on this, right? If you've got a 49% turnover rate, if every person who's a poor sleeper loses 7.2 hours of productivity a week, right? And if you're a billable hour person, multiply that by whatever rate it is, right? And you look at healthcare costs and that 85%, right? You think about the diabetes medication, we think about the blood pressure medication, the sleep medications, so many things are related to sleep. And so when I talk to organizations, I'll say, your people are going to see me one way or the other. They're either going to see me in my private practice when they're anxious, depressed, thinking about leaving their work, not productive, right? Or stressed out, or we sort of catch them ahead of time, right? And so a lot of sleep now and a lot of sort of sleep methods and courses talk about sort of evening time, right? Like, what do you do at 8 p.m., right? So at 8 p.m., you turn off your phones and don't drink anything alcoholic at night. And listen, that's great advice. And it's true. And here's the deal. It doesn't work. Nobody does it, right? Like there's so many things I know work and I don't do it, right? And my friends don't do it. The people I work with sometimes don't do it. I mean, it's just, we have to be human as well. And so when we're just focusing on sort of, I use an analogy of a football game. And so that fourth quarter is sort of that bedtime routine. It's incredibly important. So you have to play the fourth quarter if you're going to win at the game, right? But you got to play the first three quarters. And in sleep, there's a very specific way to do that if you want to win at sleep. And so much of the advice now focuses on things that we know we've tried and we're not going to do, right? And so we have to authentically have conversations about okay, well then how do we be realistic with what we do? Yeah. And then sort of also that idea of how do we integrate it into our days? And I think that's where the Drift method is very different, is that would it be great if we could all, go and take an hour walk at lunch? And would it be great if we could all wind down at, 6 o'clock? And that'd be phenomenal. There's not a chance that I can't even do that, right? Like a lot of the businesses I work with, people can't just leave their office and go work on sort of sleep and relaxation and those sort of things. So one of the things that we talk a lot about is how do you integrate these tools into your day so that it builds time into your day? It doesn't take away time, right? And so that is the key component, is if we can work on those, that for those first three quarters, seamlessly integrated. You can be in your meeting actually working on sleep. And you can be, on phone calls working on sleep. You could be driving a car working on sleep. It's that idea of how do we do it in a realistic way? So I am a mom of 14-year-old twins, right? There is no way, if you were to say, here's the deal. At 8 o'clock, I want everybody to just be relaxing, and there's not a chance that is going to work, right? At all, right? So that's where we rely on those first three quarters and helping people really sort of master that. And yes, we have to sort of play that that fourth quarter with that bedtime routine as well. But man, you got a whole lot more control, and nobody talks about it.
And tell us about the balloon. Yes. In the first three quarters, because I have taken this technique and applied it, and I'm here to tell you it works. It was like a profound unlock for me.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm Italian. I talk with my hands, and I'm super visual. And so when I thought about a sleep balloon, I'm like, this is exactly what it is, right? So if you think about every morning, you wake up with a balloon, just a deflated balloon, whatever. Your job during the day is to fill that sleep balloon as big and taut as possible with, and I won't get into the boring sleep chemicals, but you're filling those with sleep chemicals throughout the day, and then you use them at night. It's the same thing every single day. I don't have to teach sheep how to do this or cows how to do this. We all sleep the same, but it's really understanding how do you fill that sleep balloon. And that sleep balloon starts first thing in the morning. And we fill it by using our senses, filling it with light, and really sort of, I always do a visual because I always forget, but it's what do you hear, what do you see, what do you smell, what do you taste, and what do you touch, right? As long as you focus on those 5 to fill that sleep balloon during the day, you will win at sleep. You will win at the fatigue game. You will win at the sleep game. But we don't talk about it, right? Like nobody's talking about when did you get light this morning? Or, hey, when you're driving in the car to pick up your kids from bus line, just open the sunroof, right? Like you don't have to go out and I'm in Chicago, so we don't get sun 24/7, obviously. But it's that idea, but I can get sun by making sure that my desk is positioned by a window, right? I can make sure that if I'm in a conference room all day, or if I'm presenting all day or at a workshop all day, when I go to take a call, I can step out of a room and stand by a window and understand the importance that light plays in it, right? I can understand that if I'm running meetings, I'm having mints at meetings in my boardrooms. Why? Because I'm stimulating people's sense of taste while they're just listening to what they're doing. It's not taking time away from the meeting. We're not like spending 20 minutes talking about the mints we're eating, right? But we're adding cinnamon sticks to our teas. We're adding lemon to our water. All things that we can do and nobody knows. But what it's doing is it's building that sleep balloon by stimulating those senses. It makes it as big and tight as possible. And then you use that at night and it gets you through the night. And then the next day, you build it up again. And it's the same thing every day.
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And it's so doable.
Yes.
If you start to have a different relationship with it, is that it's an all day thing. It's not oh my God, I got to go to bed in 15 minutes. I'm on my phone. And the other thing that I'm noticing, and I'm guilty of this too, but very often from a business perspective, you kind of get into this habit of like, how much can I do on how little sleep? Yes. And it's almost like you become like a warrior. Oh, well, yeah, I only got 3 hours sleep, or I had to fly here, or I was out with clients till this time. And so it's become an acceptable arrangement that we have with that's not the priority. The priority is the business deal, the getting to the end of the quarter, or dealing with something. And hey, that's the high price, especially in the space that I play in with executives. That's the price you pay, is that you may get less personal time, but you're the expense. Yes. So how does that show itself in a lot of the work that you're doing, whether one-on-one or with organizations, and what are you offering as a remedy to that so we can change that behavior?
Well, the good news is that it's starting to become a conversation again, right? I think the days of, I'll sleep when I'm dead, it doesn't play well anymore in today's day and age. It really doesn't, right? And so, if you look at performance, if you look at athletes, if you watch any part of Olympics or any professional athletes all across the world, they have sleep coaches. They will talk about their sleep. They will talk about how they do not. And these are the people who are meant to be the highest performers in the world. And so I tell people, if you think that you are performing higher than an Olympic athlete, and that by you not doing what they're doing is more helpful than what they're doing, right? It's just not the case, right? They prioritize sleep. Why? Because they are more productive and they perform better, and there are less errors. And all the things that they do in their world, in a business world, it applies the exact same to us. We perform better. There's less mistakes, right? We feel better, but it's a strategy. And I think so often we think about sleep as like wellness, right? And people, sometimes are like, meh, it's wellness. It's a strategy. It's a business strategy, right? So if, I talk to people about, we'll look at budgets sometimes, and we'll look at how much they're spending on certain things. And, we look at training, huge thing, absolutely necessary, right? And so, and people don't balk at it. Certain types of training, it's like, well, we have to train them on our systems. We have to train them on our culture. We have to train them on performance, all those things. And I agree. And so I use the analogy of a car. So if I'm driving a car and I'm sleep deprived in any way, and I'm sure many people can relate to this, right? And I go to press the brake, I'm slower at pressing the brake because I'm compromised. So I don't press the brake as quickly as I need to when I'm sleepy or when I'm tired. I don't need more training on how to drive a car. I know exactly how to drive a car. You could put me through 15 hours of remediation on how to drive a car. When I am rested, I could drive that car all day long and you will not see issues in my performance. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to like train people out of sleep issues, and they're compromised. And so all of the training you do as an organization or a business, if these individuals are already sleep compromised, they won't retain and they won't be able to act on what you're training them on. And whether it's client relations, whether it's a new system you're putting in place, an operating system, it doesn't matter. They don't need more training on that. They need to really sort of have a clear, uncompromised brain to be able to absorb it and then use it.
Right. Right. You know, I'd love for you to expand upon other things you're seeing in your work. I mean, there's got to be trends and patterns, and obviously, you know, the state of the world. It's hard. It's hard to be. It's hard to be in life these days, and I'm so curious to hear what are you noticing? Are there any kind of patterns or ahas you're picking up that you think would be really powerful for us to hear and understand?
Yeah, I think in the business culture nowadays and with people are not settling anymore for people not caring about how they're doing in life. They're just not okay with it as much anymore. I think, you know, before it used to be more like, you know, produce. We don't care when you go to sleep. We don't care when you wake up. We don't care how you're doing. And we're finding that people leave positions like that. That's not what they're looking for. And so we're just seeing trends where people really want to feel understood. People want to feel cared for, right? And so, you know, when it comes to, you know, one of the things that we find over and over again is that when people feel like they have goals and that they're achieving goals and those sort of things, we find them wanting to stay places longer, right? That they're working towards something, that they're meeting goals. And you have a 30% higher chance of reaching goals when you sleep. And so it's this pattern of when we see people leaving organizations and leaving companies because they're not feeling valued, right? Or they're being pushed in a way. And you know, the thing that I think is so important is you got to walk the walk. And you and I talked about this a little bit before, just in terms of walking the walk, right? So, you know, if you're somebody who says, hey, I care about your goals. I want you to be more productive. I want you to perform. I want you to be better. And I send you an email at 2 a.m. I'm not walking the walk as the leader of the organization or the business, right? What I'm basically saying is this is lip service, right? I'm going to teach you this. I'm not going to do it though.
Right.
And so some of the trends we're now seeing too, which is good, is that leaders in these businesses are starting to see, I've got to start walking the walk, right? And so whether it's they're delaying those emails so that they don't come out until later, or if they're sending a message, right, they're scheduling it so that it's, you know, sent at a certain time. We're really sort of seeing a lot of these organizations that are gaining competitive edges are doing it by how they're sort of, you know, walking the walk with their people.
Are there common misconceptions that people have between sleep and mental health? Are there things that you're detangling for people to say, no, here's what it is?
Yeah. So sometimes we'll get is, you know, oh, I'm a good sleeper, right? Or, you know, it's fine. And we know now the statistics now are 2 out of 3 Americans are struggling with sleep, right? So I always say you're literally one human away from a poor sleeper. So even though you may be a great sleeper, right? Your spouse may not be, your children may not be, your friends may not be. And I cannot tell you, when I go to these, do these workshops and these conferences, the amount of individuals who come up to me and say, I'm a good sleeper, but my wife, right? Or, I'm a horrible sleeper and it drives my spouse batty, or man, I can put my head on the pillow and, it's just, everybody has a sleep story, right? And so sort of this misconception is it doesn't affect me or it's not in my world. And it is everywhere. It is everywhere. And when we don't prioritize it, when we don't look at it, or when we think that sleep starts at 8 p.m., to me, that's the biggest misconception. It doesn't start at 8 p.m. It starts the moment you open your eyes and understanding when you need to be opening your eyes. And when you open your eyes, what do you need to be doing when you open your eyes?
Yeah.
And so that misconception of I'm just sort of helpless to sleep, right? There's nothing I can do about it. I haven't slept for 20 years. Just that powerlessness misconception, or my brain runs at night and I can't stop it. Just those misconceptions of powerlessness when it comes to sleep. That's what I see more so. And the truth is that people have so much power with their sleep and with their fatigue if they start sort of understanding this.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to tease that out a bit more because we talked about the balloon idea. What other strategies, hacks, best practices that you can offer us? Everybody get their pen and paper out.
Yes.
I'd love for you to just riff. Like what do you think some of the best strategies are?
So if people remember nothing from this, which I hope that's not the case, but if they remember nothing from this, I want them to remember the importance of light. Light. If people are listening, write it down, underline it, highlight it, circle it, scream it, tattoo it. I don't care what you do with it. But the importance of light is because there is a part of our brain that one of its main functions is just sort of sensing that. If you think about us before phones, before lights, or like we've slept since humans, right? It's a human thing, right? Mm-hmm. And so our schedules and our, bodies, we have two systems at play. So we have a circadian rhythm clock, and that's that 24-hour-ish system that we all have. And we don't get more, even though we might want it. And that works on things like routines and sunlight. And that works on like timing of meals and all those sort of things. The other system we have is that sleep driver system, and that's the sleep balloon, right? Mm-hmm. That's the one that we're creating the sleep pressure to help you fall asleep. And one of the things that starts that balloon off is light. So the moment you wake up, for you to make sure you open those blinds and make sure you are getting sunlight in is huge. And as you're going through your day, really check in with yourself and say, like, so I have a water bottle over here. I make sure it's really cold. Why? It's a simple strategy, but right when I touch it, not only is it stimulating taste because it's colder and I add lemon to it, but it's also tangible. I can feel the cold, right? So I'm stimulating my sense of touch and my sense of taste at the same time. And I'm doing that while I'm giving presentations. People do it at board meetings. They can do it during meetings, right? You don't have to stop and be like, hold on 1 minute. I am going to drink this, which is a part of my sleep strategy, right? Like just drink your drink, right? Like add a cinnamon stick to your tea, right? Drink those mints. I always have things like around me. I have unburned candles because they tend to smell better. I think my kids took my other candle. But I always have stuff like that. I have lotion that smells, right? And why? So that during the day, I can be on a call doing this or a podcast, putting lotion on my hands. Nobody would know. I can smell it. Right. I can feel it. It's building that sleep balloon. So we can do things all day long, right? We can look at sort of watching what we're eating and what we're drinking throughout the day. We can look at sort of that timing of sunlight, which is key, right? We want to get as much sunlight as we can because that's sort of that's the big booster for that balloon. And we just really want to focus on anything sensory. There's no right or wrong when it comes to sensory. So if you want to, if you have a meeting, if you're on a phone call and you want to go outside, great. Go outside and don't put shoes on. Feel the grass under your feet, right? Stand there, take the call. But sensory-wise, you're building that sleep balloon. But you're integrating it into your day. You're not taking time away from the responsibilities that you have.
How does alcohol play in?
It's a great question. That's the one of the most common questions.
Or like, hey, can I still have my wine? Yeah, right?
100%. So, okay. So the deal is we know that alcohol, it's got, about an 8-ish or so hour half-life, right? Like it stays in our system, for it can stay in our system for a little bit. So the problem we have is the earlier we drink it, the better, right? So what it'll do is it can put us to sleep well, but we don't see those after effects of alcohol, which is when it's still in our system after a few hours, it can really affect our REM sleep and our deep sleeps. And that's where we get the restorative sleep. So people think, well, I drink and it knocks me out, but we don't think about the idea of how long it can stay in our system. And that sort of metabolism can differ for different people, right? But when it comes to alcohol, I always just encourage people, I don't want to say day drink because that doesn't sound right, but right, like too close to bedtime. And it's really going to mess with those restorative stages of sleep. Now, the other thing I know is that people are going to drink, right? Like any sort of executive retreat, right? If I can give this and then sure enough, 6 o'clock is happy hour, right? Like, and then it's 8 o'clock is dinner and wine, right? I always tell people, like, you also have to live life with these sleep strategies, right? So, have a glass of wine, right? Have your beer if you're, doing your thing. If we don't have to do it every day, that's going to help our sleep, but don't catastrophize it, right? Yeah. So go out, live your life, have a glass of wine. No, it's probably going to throw off your sleep, right? But the good news is the very next day, you get the same sleep balloon, right? So don't get in your own way, right? Don't compensate for last night's poor sleep or drinking by messing up today's sleep balloon. So just get back on track, get the sunlight, get up, get moving. But we tend to get in our own way with it and then really sort of mess up today's sleep balloon because of yesterday's sleep balloon.
I would love for you to share with us some success stories of either people, organizations that you've worked with. I'd love to hear how this is really coming to life.
Yeah, that's a great question. That's my favorites. I adore the follow-up responses I get where people use the language of their sleep balloon. Like, just like when you said, right? Like it's a common language. And when people email me and say, here's the deal, I moved my desk. I have a large CEO of a very big company, and he and I were talking the other day, and I said, you need to move your desk. Right? Like, I'm like, where's the window? I don't even see a window. Like, we've been working together. Where's the window? Right? And he was like, oh, it's over there. I was like, great. Step one, right? Move your desk towards your window. Right? And so he did. Right? And he's like, well, I never thought of moving my desk. Right? And so after that, he's like, oh my gosh. Right? Like, I noticed my sleep balloon filling up. Right? I'm no longer, as tired or fatigued. Those sort of things. Right? When people make those little changes. I'll have parents at bus line, right? And they'll contact me and say, oh my gosh, I just told my mom's group, right, to open your sunroofs, right, when you're driving and just get the sunlight in. And so we see, when people do this, we see heightened productivity. We see less fatigue. We see people performing better in terms of less errors. And relationally, we also see people performing better, meaning we're just not as crabby. One of our taglines is better sleep, better humans, period. So I am such a better mom and way less crabby when I sleep better. And so it's also relational in any of your companies, right? If you're trying to build relationships with customers or with your team, we want them to be more successful relationally. And we've seen over and over again sort of the success that when you sleep better, your relationships are better. You're able to communicate better.
I am curious, what about jet lag, right? So I'm traveling to the UK next week, and, I have a philosophy on things that I do, but how do you have a sleep balloon in that environment where you're going to be crossing over time zones and your body's going to be taxed in a different way? What are some things that we could do to get ready for that? Or even how you deal with it in the moment?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So keep in mind that sleep balloon, wherever you travel, is still your sleep balloon, right? Like, we don't lose it when we get on a plane, right? And how you fill it is the exact same regardless of where you're at, right? Where jet lag becomes an issue is when we talked about those two systems before, that circadian rhythm and that sleep driver system. When you fly, you really mess up that circadian rhythm system. That's used to, wait a minute, it's supposed to be this time, right? Like this doesn't feel right, right? It's supposed to be 6 p.m. Why is it super bright outside, right? Or wait a minute, right? It's not, it's supposed to be 9 at night, and so why aren't we going to bed yet? Or why, right? So it's really, when it comes to that jet lag, two things. It's one about understanding just the hit you're going to take. It's normal, right? It's natural. So we have to understand we have a sleep balloon. We fill it the same way regardless of where we're at. Like I said before, that light idea is so critical. So you're better off timing light where you're going. Meaning, if you, let's say, get off a plane at, let's say you've flown throughout the night and it's, let's say, 11 a.m. when you get there, and that should be bedtime for you, but it's 11 a.m. there. You want to start adapting to their light, meaning stay up as long as you can to get that light, because that light will start training that system of like, okay, there's something weird going on, right? Like we may have a whole new time zone going on. So the more that we can sort of sync their light with our circadian rhythm, the better, but it takes a little bit, right? I'm a huge fan too of being mindful of, you brought up alcohol, right? When your body's trying to figure out where it's at, right? If we can hold on the alcohol for a minute just to give it a chance, right? Just to be like, okay, let's try to adjust first. So I'm much more of a fan of doing things like water and really hydrating to start sort of getting your body as aware as it can be of like something's different here. And then you go straight back to filling the sleep balloon, right? If it's daytime out in the UK, how am I filling my sleep balloon in the UK, right? If it's getting dark in the UK, what am I doing to help build that bedtime routine? I should be shutting down a little bit more. I should be turning off some of the lights. So we just want to start adapting to sort of the new light dark cycle, wherever it is we're going.
I love that. That's really good. Very helpful.
Good.
So what do you think about all the products and services geared towards sleep, like watches, rings, apps, bedtime stories, supplements? Like how do they all fit from your perspective?
It's a great question. This is one of the parts where I get a little flack because I don't necessarily agree with some of the trends. So we're seeing now, the Oura rings, the Fitbits, all those sort of things. We're actually seeing technology built into beds, right, that monitor sleep and monitor, REM and those sort of things. We have to keep in mind that they are not as accurate as the people selling them want you to think they are. They're just not, right? Like when we hook people up to do sleep studies, right, we're hooking up their brainwaves. We can see everything based on sort of brainwaves and those sort of things. A lot of times, some of these things are looking at, right, movement. They're looking at breathing. They're looking at things that we can actually shift. I can be awake and you can have somebody in a very heavily meditated state who's awake, who could appear asleep, and they're not, right? And so, I caution people with the idea of, sometimes the data is not as accurate as we think. The other thing that we're seeing is something called orthosomnia in our field. And so what orthosomnia is now is it's an anxiety around basically perfect sleep scores. So now we've created an issue where we're already anxious that we're not sleeping. So now we have these devices and we're not registering perfect sleep scores, or we don't feel like we're in REM enough, or stages or whatever. And now we're anxious about a score. And so we're seeing people sleep worse now sometimes with these devices because they're not using it for data purposes, right? Like if you want to use it to help you build that sleep balloon, I'm a fan, right? If it's going to help you stay on structure in terms of when I go to sleep, when I wake up, for the reminders on hydration or movement, or any of those sort of things that are built into that, I'm a huge fan. I think it's super helpful. When we're using it to compare our number with our friends' numbers, or, our face group, numbers, that's what I'm not a fan, because now we just have anxiety around it, and it's It's the bane of my existence right now because I just, people are like, well, I only got this score. And I'm like, but how did you feel? And they're like, well, I thought I felt good, but then I woke up and my sleep score. And we're outsourcing how we feel now to electronics versus waking up and being like, I feel good. And being like, okay, well, what do I do to build my sleep balloon today? So I would much rather have that be the focus than if we think we didn't get enough REM or we think we didn't get enough that. There's just very limited control you have in that. And so I really encourage people to shift back to those first 3 quarters and really focus on that sleep balloon and use that data, right, to help you focus on those first 3 quarters.
Thank you for saying that, because I got rid of a watch that I was wearing because it would judge and evaluate the success of my day based upon that score I would get. And then I would try to gamify it. What did I do? I was trying to replicate it. Oh, well, I did really well here. And I was like, this is completely out of control. And you were right. I was outsourcing it. And everything kept coming back to heart rate, am I anxious? It says I'm anxious. Why am I not feeling anxious? All of a sudden I get in my head, I'm like, this is not good for me. But I do know a lot of people who love it, live by it, can't wait to turn their watch on before that workout starts. That's great. Good for you. It doesn't work for me. And so I appreciate your perspective. One of my favorite challenges, and that's a total reframe, by the way. One of my favorite challenges with sleep is worrying. I am Olympic level worrier. And my brain is so good at worrying and catastrophizing. You actually have a great expression. You call it constructive worrying time. I'd love for you to say more.
Yeah, like I said before, then one of the main things that I see is the thinking at night, right? We go to sleep and we just can't turn our minds off. And sometimes it's not even anxiety based. Sometimes it's just the to-do list or the things I have to do tomorrow, but either way, it's that mind still working, right? Our body lays down and our brain still is going. And so constructive worry is basically like pre-gaming, way less fun, but it's like pre-gaming, if you will, with your brain. So it's like, let me worry about it before. Let me think about it before. So 2 hours before bedtime, sit down, take a piece of paper, your phone, I don't care how you do it, whatever you got, right? It could be a Post-it. And what you do is you sort of identify what do I think is going to be in my brain tomorrow, right? Or tonight. And it can, usually we know, right? Either something that's been there for a while, right? And we know it's going to show up again that night, or it's something new that's popped up during the day that, is unsettled or you're going to think about it. Or for example, my kids have their dentist appointment, today. I know that was going to be in my mind unless I figured out when I had to end work to get to their school. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I didn't want to figure out any of that, how to adjust my day during bedtime routine or when I was in bed at night. So 2 hours before bedtime, I sat down, I wrote down when I had to be there, how far the place was from their school, and when I had to leave. And then that thought showed up at night and it said, hey, tomorrow the kids have a dentist. And I was able to say, I know, but I've already planned for it. And then your brain's like, oh, okay, good. You got it. And it's like, yeah, I got it. Right. So that sort of constructive worry is be constructive with what you're thinking about. Right. You don't have to solve it, but come up with like the next 3 steps. Right. So if let's say you're worried about an upcoming meeting, right, then write that down. Worried about upcoming meeting. The next 3 steps, you're not going to solve it. You're not going to go into the meeting, right? But maybe the next 3 steps are, tomorrow I'm going to pull notes from the last meeting we had. And maybe the second one is, I'm going to consult with my colleague because they seem to have some good ideas on what we might be discussing. And maybe it's also, I'm going to practice that deep breathing that I learned about because I think I need to do more deep breathing during my day because this meeting is really riling me up. So that constructive worry is do it before bedtime and just give yourself 3 next steps so that when you go to bed at night, if your brain brings it back up, which it usually will, you can say like, hey, we've already thought about it. And then that will help you sort of drift to sleep.
I'm going to add one additional technique. I didn't come up with this. Somebody taught this to me, and this is so, so effective. So when that worrying brain comes up, this happened to me last night, is I have a conversation with, I'll just say my higher self. And sometimes it's like people that have passed away. And I will say, hey, listen, this is on my mind. And sometimes I say it out loud. This is on my mind. I need you to take this off of my mind.
that.
And then, and I'm sure you're going to process and work through a solution while I'm asleep. And then I'm a completely attuned listening audience when I get up in the morning. But I need you to take this off of me and solve for it while I'm here. And what I will notice is that, let's say I wake up in the middle of the night and that's happening again, I will hear those voices and they say, you gave that to me. Why are you problem solving this? I got this. You actually asked me to take this off of your plate. And so I keep reinforcing it, and it really does work.
I love that.
And again, you just say, I'm a receptive audience, but it's in the morning after I've already worked through it. And a lot of times what happens is with the constructive worrying, but also through this technique, a resolution will present itself, or you start to just feel better where you're like, it's okay. I can handle whatever's thrown at me.
Yes.
You just
I
feel
love that technique. Thank you for sharing that. That's a phenomenal technique.
Thank you.
And so true. And I think the other component to that becomes, we don't typically do our best work at night, right? So to your point, right? Like, it is so much better to give it away at night than to think whatever you're about to come up with when you're sleep deprived at night is the solution, right? Like, fresh eyes, fresh hearts, fresh minds tend to be the best time to make decisions rather than exhausted and fatigued.
Yeah. And don't let that part of yourself say, well, maybe if you get up now. Yeah, I know it's only 2:30. Just start your day now, because we've all had those moments where you're like, that's crazy.
Yes.
So Dr. Lemke, I have one final question for you. This has been such an incredible conversation. I literally have a full page of notes. What do you see as the future of sleep science, and how do you want to play in?
So I don't think we're getting away from electronics. I don't think we're getting away from AI. So I think that will be a component of sleep in the future. And my hope to that is that as we're using these, we're using them for good rather than evil, right? Like, we're using these in a way that is giving us the data for those first 3 quarters, right? Because I think we are very focused right now on AI and electronics and those sort of things. And so I don't think it's going away, but my hope is that we start using it correctly and the way that helps us sleep rather than hurts our sleep. Mm-hmm. And we really have to figure out, if when we're on our phones at night, helping people understand that when we're scrolling, when we're looking, right? And that's what a lot of people get into, is these just constant dopamine hits. Right. And so when we're talking about sort of anything related to the sleep or the future of sleep, people have to understand that, right, when we're constantly getting these dopamine hits to our brain and all day long, we need this sort of immediate gratification. When you go to sleep, it's really boring, to be honest, right? Like your brain's like, well, now what? Like, I'm not scrolling, I'm not looking at anything, like. And so then it stays up trying to make connections and trying to do those things. So that future sleep science also has to include the understanding of slowing our brain down during the day as well when we're able, and just to take a few minutes so that the first time we're doing that isn't when we put our head on the pillow at night, because it's just not going to work. And even if we lay down, and I tell people, don't even use the word sleep, just tell yourself you're going to rest. You just, take it out. Take it out of the equation and take the pressure off of it. Because I think that has to be a conversation as well, is just sort of decatastrophizing, depressuring sleep and sort of the structure of it and what stage am I in? And, the less control sometimes we have over it, the better. So I think that's an important conversation. And I think businesses and I think organizations really have to understand that, they have a lot of people, right, that they are responsible for. And I do believe that we're seeing it in a lot of companies, organizations, where they are taking this on, where they are learning how to sort of adapt it into their day and adapt it into their meetings. Because I think people are really starting to see now that you can't have a successful business without addressing it. And so I do think that is going to show up. And I think then we get to take it home to our kids, right? And so, my hope for the future of sleep science too is that it's not just an adult conversation, right? This is a kid conversation, right? And so my kids, I mean, they'll use it against me sometimes. Like, my sleep balloon's not full. Like, I think I need a few extra hours. And you're like, good try. That's not going to work. Right. But the fact that kids can talk about it, that kids understand how do they set themselves up for better sleep, right? Once they understand that sleep balloon idea, for them as well, it's very similar. And once they do that, breaking away from some of those electronics and some of those games and getting some of that sunlight, stimulating their senses, we need to do that more, not only sort of for our future, but to teach our kids how to do that too.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm so grateful that you're doing this work in the world. And it's such an important thing. I mean, it's sort of mission critical. And it's, again, particularly something that is of importance right now in the world. And I feel so, so grateful that you took the time to be with me. And I just can't wait to see what happens from all this wonderful work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having the conversation about it. I think the more people that have conversations that are invested in somebody's sort of fullness, whether it's their sort of emotional health, psychological health, spiritual health, that's how we get to people. That's how we create better leaders. That's how we create better humans. So I just appreciate you being open to this conversation.
Yay to better humans.
Yay to better humans.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.